World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
It's just so dangerous. You are risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
There's only 2 chances left to prove what you have and what is available. We've seen 3 very different results from 3 very different races, and now is where it all starts to bring itself to the melting pot. Who's brought what they need ingredients-wise to cook up a storm today? This is Misano. This is a track which, for many, marks a very important point. The penultimate round here of your AMD GT4 series, here with World Pro Racing streaming live on YouTube, on Facebook Live, and on Twitch, as well as with TVM Sports, with ESTV, the Esports Television Network, and on top of that as well, we are with motorsport.tv. My name's Jake Sperry, Kieran McGinley, along with the ride for me here today as we see what these drivers have to cook up at a circuit which is more commonly known for its MotoGP, more rather than anything else. Of course, the circuit is named after the late Marco Simoncelli after all, but by any stretch of the imagination, Kieran, this is a place which quite often you say is about patience. This is a patient circuit.
Yes, well, good evening everybody and welcome along to the stream. Yes, it's a circuit that was reprofiled and redesigned not too far in the past to aid with overtaking, especially with those on 4 wheels. It's a great track to come to, great track that promises some good overtaking opportunities, and the 15 turns around Misano that we do have is fronted by the Variante del Parco, which of course is a very, very tough chicane to get right, especially on the very first lap. Almost very similar to the first chicane at Monza. It's quite narrow, and going too wide through there is at your discretion. But let's see what happens in the hour race that we've got coming up later tonight.
Exactly, an hour's race, a bit of practice to go through first, and of course qualifying as well for what is a very close, very difficultly fought championship, which seems to have 3 drivers at the top who have each got a win to their name so far this season. Of course, Taha Mali in the Ginetta. In the Audi, you've got Luke Whitehead. And then, of course, you've got Tinko van der Velde, who could very easily throw that cat among the proverbial pigeons. But if you haven't had the chance to already, you can like, you can share, you can subscribe for more amazing content brought to you by us here at World Pro Racing. And if you haven't had the chance to already, you can head to worldproracing.com/event. That will get you into watching or getting yourself into entering a sim racing event of your own, be it your first time jumping in onto the sim, or be it that you're looking for the next great element of competition. There's something there for you at worldproracing.com/events. We're going to have a little look now at practice here, Kieran, and a track which is very, very interesting in terms of how it is designed. A very, I would say, unique T look to it as it goes through. It looks like the letter T, and 15 very, very tough turns on this T.
Yes, and qualifying when it's coming up very, very shortly is going to be critical here. Although the track has been resurfaced and, of course, redesigned to allow for a little bit more overtaking, it's still quite a narrow circuit in the grand scheme of things. These GT4 cars should be able to take advantage of these flowing corners as well, when maybe with these GT4 cars it might be slightly more on the cards to make an overtake at some of these locations. Make no mistake, though, that these drivers will be on the hunt to go as fast as they can in qualifying and take advantage of a good track position later down the line. It will help them going into this hour-long endurance we have later on.
It certainly will, and we will see how many times this battle will go through over the course of an hour. So it's going to be a tough hour's worth of racing, especially when you consider just how intensive this circuit can be. There aren't really many big resting spots, and even when you do have a resting spot down a straight, you're very much alert to the fact that you've got a very heavy braking zone, which normally tends to follow that. And this is one which is going to be all about staying close to drivers behind here, there, and pretty much everywhere as well. Taha Mali then fastest at the moment in practice, a 42.237 is the current quickest time out there, clear by just about a tenth of a second here from Maximilian Vedi. And of course practice doesn't give you really, Kieran, everything. It doesn't give you the full picture. It gives you the picture that drivers want to show at this point.
It's the picture-in-picture moment, isn't it? It's kind of where it might be in this practice session. Of course, with the top two being separated by less than a tenth of a second, that's an encouraging sign going into tonight's proceedings. But you never want to give too much away coming into the practice session. This is your time to pretty much nail down your race pace. Even at that, you might try a slightly different setup to see if there's something you've missed in your hours of practicing before the official practice session. But don't give too much away in qualifying. You do not want to tell other drivers how quick you actually are. Save that for the qualifying session and save that for the last possible moment in qualifying.
And those last possible moments are crucial. A little bit of a reduced field, it seems, here today around this place. 16 drivers then into the forefront and looking to try and prove what they've got in terms of pace out there today. So that will mean that it's going to be a little bit easier out there overall for those drivers up in the front if today were to go wrong for them, Kieran. Because of the fact of how the point structure works, it means that with 16 drivers here, so long as they make it to the checkered flag, everyone's in with at least 10 points in the back pocket.
Yeah, and 35 points available for the race winner. It, really encourages the drivers to make sure that they finish at the top of the order. And with some prizes on the line as well, the top three getting the AMD Ryzen processors as prizes, with an AMD goodie bag for the 4th, 5th and 6th place drivers in the championship. I mean, there's some great prizes on the line, so why not try and get yourselves up the order. The top 25, of course, scoring points. And as we see right now, 16 drivers currently in this practice session. That means if you make it to the checkered flag, you're scoring that minimum of 10 points. There's no reason why you shouldn't want to try and finish this race.
Exactly. And finishing the race means that you'll be jumping up in terms of championship pictures and important pictures that we see out there. On board with Luke Whitehead, really wrestling that Audi through the first 2 and 3 corners out there on track. This is, of course, on the run to that Del Parco corner, the Variante Del Parco, now to the Curva del Rio, the Rivers corner here, and again, just dealing with boatloads of oversteer and correction through every single section, soaring at the wheel, trying to get through turn 6 over to Quecha corner, the oak tree there at turn 7. So there's always work to be done around this track, and you're seeing here from Luke Whitehead's perspective, Kieran, just how much, firstly, A, he's taking of curb around this place, which would be a nightmare for the tyres, and secondly, how much he's really having to rag on that steering wheel.
Yeah, that's a nervous setup he's got on the car then, trying to make it as pointy as possible. That's going to be an important sign for Luke Whitehead. It might not be kind to his tyres later on in the race, and it might not be kind to his race pace later on. The fact that the car's so nervous going into some of these corners really does mean that it's on full attack here is Luke Whitehead. As well as that, he's trying to make sure that the car is as pointy as possible, so when he does turn in, you can see that the car bites instantly. That, he feels, is going to be an important part of this race, and with so many flowing corners here at Misano, that's not necessarily a bad way to go. He's just going to have to be nervous that he doesn't push the car too much, because it really is on the ragged edge. He goes a millimetre too far, he misses his braking zone by a millimetre, that car is going to bite back.
It certainly will, and that is something that I'm sure that Luke Whitehead will be keeping an eye out on. Has just improved lap upon lap. Malley has improved to a 42 flat, but Whitehead makes sure that it's Ashtois 1-2, with the fact that the 57 machine has just gone to within 0.2 of a second of the fastest time so far. We haven't talked about this so far. We've got about 8.5 minutes before we'll be thinking about qualifying outfits, but manufacture has been such an important point of this season. They haven't been able to change what car they have been able to go in so far this season, and the big key is that most drivers have decided Porsche was the way forward for them, but we have seen a whole boatload of machines. For example, we got 6 inside the top 6, 7 inside the top 8 in terms of a manufacturer split, as Dean Vella finds out just how difficult that slowing section is down to the wagon corner, the Curva del Carro.
Yeah, and it's interesting really how the Porsches, and especially in the last race didn't quite match up to expectations. Be the highest Porsche finisher last time out was Jack Noller, who finished in 6th. And as we go into this practice session, it's Jack Noller again, who's currently the 5th fastest driver in practice. So it really does feel like someone's missed the trick with the Porsches. Something's not quite clicking right, because, for example, with Taha Mali, he seems to have pulled the rabbit out of the hat with the Ginetta. It has been a solid car no matter the track it's been brought to, so that was a solid part, as well as Luke Whitehead in the Audi. We haven't seen many Audis, if at all, in this GT4 series so far, and the fact that he's brought the Audi, he's tried something different, and this is the point of trying something different. If it works, it really works.
Certainly does, and if it does work, you get a sizable advantage. If it doesn't, though, you look a little bit foolish when it doesn't work. So that'll be in the back of the mind as Mikhail Mercieka moves up then to P5 overall, about 0.6 of a second adrift at this stage, trying to make some very solid progress. Of course, season finale is going to be in 2 weeks' time, ladies and gentlemen. You want to be tuning in for that with us and World Pro Racing, because we'll be heading to you from the Nürburgring, the final round of this AMD GT3 series. And because there's 2 rounds to go, Kieran, this is where we start talking crunch time. Who's going to get an all-important win? We know the top 3 in the championship all have 1 win to their name. The big key, though, is who's going to be the first to pick up multiple victories this season, if at all. Who's going to take that next momentum-shifting turn, which gives them a big hit going in towards that final round at the Nürburgring.
Sheldon Muscat just going 5th fastest definitely counts himself as a contender for that one, and with such good prizes on the line as provided by AMD, the drivers will just be pushing as much as they can, so long as you finish really in this session with less than 35 points behind the championship leader. You have every chance of making it to the top, if not into the top 3. So that's going to be on the mind of some of these drivers, but for the likes of Taha Mali, for the likes of Luke Whitehead, for the likes of Tinko van der Velde, nothing less than the championship win will be good enough.
Nothing less indeed, and of course everyone knows that it's going to be a tall order to get all of those points together and to make sure that everything lines up accordingly. But let's just talk about how this track is going to be a very tough place today to get things done. There's not necessarily what you'd call many traditional places to go and make overtakes happen. You can make a move in towards turn 1 at the Variante del Parco. You can go and make a move, for example, down over at the Curva Queccia, the Oak Tree Corner. You do have, though, that main place to make an overtake being very, very difficult to get correct today, and that is the run down to the Curva del Carro, and you go through Curvone, which in Italian I have been told means bend, so you've got the bend corner as you go on through, but really a case of slowing sections kinked right makes it very difficult to go and make a move, because you do have that natural defense, Kieran, on the inside.
You do need to size up a move about 4, 5, maybe even 6 corners before you actually get the move done. So trying to evaluate where your opponent is weaker, where they're not so good, where the car's not quite biting the way it should, maybe yours does, is going to be critical going into this race. An hour, when the grand scheme of things isn't too much of a long stint. It flies by at a track like Misano, where you can start to get into a rhythm, get into the flow of the circuit. Before you know it, that halfway point is gone, and you've got to try and start making up positions, especially if you're in that midfield. As a circuit, though, fantastic, isn't it? It looks great as well, and with these runoff areas that just quickly succumb to grass and gravel just on the outside, looming and waiting to try and catch you off guard. Track limits in places are going to be enforced, but the grass and the gravel really does do its job for the most part.
Certainly does around this place, and it very much is telling to see, as well as those anti-cut curbs that you can see on the outside of some of the corners. They're not going to make life very easy for drivers who want to push the limits all the way to the very, very extremes around this place. But we have to talk about the driver who did take the victory last time out, who is currently 3rd position out there at the moment in practice, and that is Tinko van der Velde. And it's an important win last time out for van der Velde. It was a I would say, slow build to this wonderful result that we found against the two Ashtar drivers. No team's championship, of course, in this series that we've got going forward, so it's pretty much every driver for themselves. But Van der Velde found a way to just improve steadily week on week. Now, how do you respond to being the top dog in the room after last time out?
Well, you keep on going, you keep your head down and keep your focus up there. I mean, let's face it, the top three separated by just over 0.2 of a second. You add Max Vady to the mix as well, within 0.3 of a second. Jack Noller's not too far behind either. 3.5 as Taha Mali gets very close to that wall on the right-hand side, heading in towards pit lane. Too close for comfort for me, but he timed that and got it perfect, inch perfect there. It's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky to see which one of these three drivers in Marley, Whitehead and Van der Velde as the championship protagonists will be the ones to come out on top. Luke Whitehead now starting a new flying lap. We've seen Luke Whitehead in the past couple of weeks here at World Pro Racing. He has struggled a little bit for form, but struggling a little bit from form for Luke Whitehead is finishing just on the podium or just outside of it. That is how talented he is. That is how good he's been in the past few months. We've almost been spoiled by the good results he's had. He'll be looking to try and bounce back with a win today, and being only 0.2 off the pace of Taha Mali, he knows there's still a little bit of work to be done.
Work certainly to be done, but this is what drivers go into. They can't win every week. If they did, there'd be something superhuman. Otherwise, it is a case of you have to take your checks and balances. You have to make sure that you are gaining in some areas. Maybe you're going to lose in some others, but you have that opportunity to go out there and see just exactly what you have available to you in the back pocket. Do want to also keep an eye out on the track temperatures. It is baking hot conditions here. 30 degrees track air temperature, 35 degrees track temperature. This is going to be a hot one. This is going to be a difficult day on tyres.
It's going to be a scorcher, and that's just the track. As we see Samir Foch then in the I wish I could change the brake balance McLaren. I don't know what he's trying to say there, but there we go. He's currently 12th fastest, 1.5 seconds just over of the pace of Taha Mali as we close down onto the last couple of seconds in this practice session. Only 4 drivers out there to finish off this practice session as Foch comes around the final corner and towards the start-finish line. He will get another lap if he wants one, and he comes across the line in that number 8 McLaren and does not improve on that last lap. Here's Sheldon Muscat then, just over half a second off the lead pace so far, with that 42.6, comes round the final corner and will be the first driver to take the checkered flag here in this practice session. Does he improve on his time? No, he doesn't, and well, last lap he was 0.4 quicker, but it wasn't a valid lap.
No, it was not. So ultimately that means no improvements, at least in practice, as Silva Piamet makes this drive, the Estonian driver, over towards the line in the Ninko racing machine, and gets a 44.3 down on the books. So a little bit of struggles then so far today. Oscar Saristo, the only Alpine here in this field, 2.3 seconds adrift, at least at this stage, moving on through and going towards that middle section of the track. But it's going to be a very important battle now that we're going to be seeing, because we are shifting that mentality and that focus over towards a qualifying effort. And such a qualifying effort around this place, has it ever been more predicated in this series, Kieran, when it comes to track position?
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky one. I mean, Nürburgring next week as well is a tough track to overtake, but there are more overtaking places as Samir Foch decides not to take the Curva del Carro there, as Oscar Saristo will carry on through the final corner and come into the pit lane to round off the practice session there as we move into qualifying. But yes, it's going to be important. It's a fast flowing circuit, and that translates to few overtaking opportunities. There are some heavy braking zones. You've got the first chicane. The Curva del Rio is mainly single file through there, but in the first couple of laps you might see drivers try and go side by side through there. And as you mentioned earlier, Jake, the Curva del Carro is going to be an important overtaking opportunity for most of these drivers. You're coming through Curvone, you're coming through the likes of turns 11, 12 and 13, really high speed right-handers, and then you're trying to slow the car down at the latest possible moment should be your main point of overtaking. But then again, Jake, we're in the commentary box for a reason. Those drivers will be sizing each other up and they'll already know the places they can make a move.
They certainly will. This is going to be something to keep in mind. Qualifying has been very important over the course of this season so far, and will that be a point to continue as drivers are now out there on their outlaps looking to try and get themselves together? No surprises to see Luke Whitehead out there as the first driver of anybody try and get themselves forward and to try and set a lap time. He's someone who wants to lead by example, wants to put those points down very early on. But now you start to really understand, okay, 15 minutes and you've got one lap that says I am the best that I can possibly be. One lap pace doesn't translate necessarily into race pace, but it gives you a very good idea.
It does indeed, and the qualifying setup as well comes into play as well. Do you try and set the car up to qualify, or do you focus on the hour-long race that follows it? Well, for Luke Whitehead, he's got basically a car and a setup and the driver himself to pretty much have a go at both as he makes his way around the final corner to size up now for a lap of Misano.
One lap of Misano then with Luke Whitehead as we take this charge then towards the Variante del Parco. Turn numbers 1, 2 and 3 out on track. Nice and neat. You've got a little bit of time for the transfer there with a little correction going through 2, but then 3 will very easily follow on as you try and put the power down up to 5th gear, but immediately flick that down to 3rd going through the Curva del Rio. And now you can see the back end wanting to dance away from Whitehead as he makes the charge through 6 and now up towards the Curva Quecha here, the Oak Tree corner. This is a very, very long run. One of the key places you're going to see a move done today is going to be here into Quecha corner. And now as you come out of here, the Sunset corner is next, and that is the Curva Tremonto out there on circuit. So you've got this small inviting right first, a little bit of a lift, but that is a heavy, copious amount of understeer. So that lap will have to be abandoned from Luke Whitehead as he goes on through. So issues on the opening lap, not ideal. Jan-Nicolas Erbrich, though, in the McLaren is making his drive towards Curvone. This very, very fast and committed right-hander. The car's at full load through this section and through the next corner as well. You have to turn and brake through these next series of right-hand bends before you reach the wagon corner. This is the Curva del Caro out on circuit, and it's all about that charge coming out of here, which gives you that run to Curva Misano, the final corner out then on track. A 90-degree left-hander, which very much comes out of nowhere. It's a very, very unique style of corner as in terms of what comes before it from about Quercia onwards, and then over the line, Erbrich goes 1.2 seconds behind Tahamali at the moment, but immediately usurped by Van der Velde. So at least for the early stages then, it seems, Kieran, Van der Velde has got that very nice solid time on the board.
Yes, but remember, Luke Whitehead hasn't set a valid lap yet. He'll be on the charge this time around to see if he can get himself further up the order, at least get that lap time on the board. And looking at the championship standings, we should probably bring you up to speed. It's Tahamali who leads the championship on 89 points. Luke Whitehead in 2nd place on 87. Tinko van der Velde in 3rd on 84. All 3 of them have had at least 1 win so far this season. Jack Noller there on 80 points. He got 2 2nd places at the 1st and 2nd round, then finished, I think it was 6th. Last time out at Kyalami, so he's well and truly in that running for the top 3, maybe even an outside chance of the championship. And then it's going to be Simon Spett who is in 5th place in 54 points, so there's a bit of a gap forming between the top 4 and the rest of the field. But remember, the top 6 in this championship all get those prizes, so Simon Spett is joined by Jan-Nicolas Erbrich, who rounds off the top 6.
Yeah, that is very much the case then at this moment in time, how this is working out for the top 6. We know 9 points between the top 4 is something of a uncomfortable margin, and especially in a series like this when everyone is so close and everyone is scrapping and clawing for every result they can. The fact that you have a very, very tight margin at the front means that you have to guard against all eventualities, which if you are driver who's P1 up there at this point in time, Tinko van der Velde, means you've got a lot of work to do and a lot of prep to do to be quicker than a lot of your rivals. And as we say that is so impressive to be a full half a second quicker. My word.
41.6. This is what I was talking about in that practice session. You do not want to show your cards in the practice session. Leave it till qualifying. And that is a huge lap from Tinko van der Velde. That is the marker, well and truly set down. And he says to Whitehead, to Marley, and to Nola, come find me, come get me.
Certainly does, and that is a huge statement message. Luke Whitehead will pull the car off to the side of the road, will probably take a tow back to the pits, and will look to try and get back out there again once more. There is Taha Mali out there in the Ginetta. Very, very nimble machine. Not necessarily the fastest in a straight line. It's going to be difficult for the Ginetta to go and make moves today on this long straight, but you would say that this is a Ginetta suiting style circuit. Got a lot of medium to low speed corners out there on the track, which you would say favours a car with, firstly, a shorter wheelbase, and secondly, one that doesn't have much top speed but a lot of acceleration.
And that's it. That's what you think when you think of Ginetta. You think about the shorter wheelbase. You think about the acceleration off the line. Yes, what it lacks in top speed, it makes up for being pretty a nimble car. That NM Racing team, Ginetta of Taha Mali, just looks like it's in control all the time through then the final corner and onwards towards the start-finish straight out of Curva Misano and towards the start-finish line. Is this going to be an improvement for Taha Mali? It is. Puts him now up into second place, still into the 142s, a 142.195.
Yes, so still half a second off of the pace. Dean Vella searching for a little bit of time. Moves up to P7 then with that one. 1.1 seconds adrift, and there is Simon Speth then remaining in position number 10 out there at this stage. Muscat as well improves, also moves a GT Omega RPM Esports outfit over into 7th. So it seems like times are starting to come down in, and let's also work out the fact that hot conditions today means that one thing and one thing only becomes a reality. That track will rubber in quicker. There will be more grip available the longer that this qualifying goes on.
Yeah, and qualifying has been cooler since practice. The track temperature's dropped to 33 degrees from the 35 degrees it was at the start of practice. The air temperature has also come down from 31 degrees in practice to 29 degrees now. Now, those are very minute changes to the naked eye, but to a driver, that could be critical. That could mean the difference between that 141.6 and not getting into the 41s at all. They have to play this so finely. The wind is relatively still as well, so the drivers won't have to worry too much about any crosswinds affecting handling.
Especially around this place. We are effectively in the Adriatic at this moment in time, and the Adriatic, of course, I believe the northwest of Italy, if my maps serve me correctly, is always a very windy affair from time to time. So work then is often needed when it comes to crosswinds. We don't seem to have too many of those here today. There is Silver Piamets in the Ninko Racing machine, the Aston Martin making drives then towards that final corner, the Misano corner out there, and looking to try and make a drive towards the line. Of course, this track, when it first opened, they ran the other way. They ran anti-clockwise, not clockwise, but Piamet crossing the line, a 44.1 did improve, but unfortunately 12 thousandths away from a position.
Yeah, and that's going to be a kick of the teeth then. Silver Pyramid's putting in that lap time now, but we know the Estonian has always more up his pocket, up his sleeve. He will be able to find some more time out there in that Ninko Racing Aston Martin. Let's see what he can do for the remainder of the session. Just over 5 minutes to go, and it is Tinko van der Velde who leads this qualifying session with a 141.661, half a second clear of anybody else.
If that's not a message that we have seen once before. Remember when Luke Whitehead qualified so very fantastically over at Alton Park in the wetter conditions, I think is the right way to say on that day. But qualifying is so important, and these drivers know what they have in the back pocket. If they've got anything, they might as well show it, because there's only a handful of drivers who are not out there on circuit at the moment. Anyone with a P next to their time means that they are in the pit lane at this stage, and I've noticed a very stable and solid P for Tinko van der Velde. He feels quite comfortable at the moment on a 41.6. Feet up, have a rest, and then get the mind situated, it seems, at this point for the race, which will be coming up, of course, after qualifying concludes.
Yeah, and he's just waiting, biding his time now. He knows he just wants to go for the one more lap, maybe two if he thinks he's got the fuel for it and could get the tyres warmed up in case. Yeah, definitely looking for a final lap charge to see if he can get even further ahead at the top of the table. And if you come across a driver who is so in tune with the track, so in tune with the car, and so in tune with the setup, it kind of harks back to the likes of Michael Schumacher in qualifying. He would find the time, he would set the time down, and when everybody else got close, he just managed to find even more time. It was a morale breaker. If Tinko van der Velde can do something like that today, and it pull even further clear than half a second at the end of qualifying, think of the mind games and the mentality of the likes of Marley, Nola and Whitehead. How much more pace they'll have to pull out just to keep up, let alone try and get past.
Yes, and so if you need all of that pace, if you need as much as you can from it, then Van der Velde, I think, has very swiftly proven he is driver to beat in this field as Speth moves up into 7th position, just jumping ahead of Sheldon Muscat there with a comfortable drive there on that lap. Jan-Nicolas Ulrich back there in 10th position in the DJ Racing McLaren, trying to search for as much time as can be optimally found at this point in time. Just struggling a little bit with turn in there, in towards turn number 12 on, sorry, no, turn 13 out on circuit just before the Curva del Carro. And it's so interesting to see how a car is set up, because if you do not get 13 right or any one of those kinks right on the back section of the circuit, then you are in for a world of hurt. There is a lot of room to gather mistakes, but they're big mistakes nevertheless.
Yeah, that runoff area on the outside of that high-speed section, those right-handers from Coverne on towards the braking point at Curva del Carro. Yes, the runoff area on the outside looks big, but when you're traveling at those speeds, it doesn't look so big anymore, and the walls just get ever closer the faster you go. It is a really tricky section to get right. It looks so easy, you just turn right, but the loads of the car has a huge effect, especially on these GT4 cars, where they haven't got the aerodynamic performance of their GT3 counterparts. There is much less aero on these cars. They're much more relying on the mechanical grip side of these cars. So this is where the suspension comes into play. And if you try and push the car too much, especially on the mechanical grip, it will bite back.
It certainly will bite back, and it makes things very, very difficult, especially around this place. Tahamali jumps up into second. Jack Noller for a very short moment was there. Max Vady now is up into 4th position. Luke Whitehead's in a bit of trouble here today in 5th place. So something definitely not clicking at this moment in time for the Audi driver there at this stage. And this is what we're starting to see. A minute and under we will be at very, very shortly. Some drivers just not finding anything that really alerts them to what's wanted. 6 different manufacturers in the top 6 again, with Murcieka very much best of the rest right now in P6.
Yeah, doing a great job in the sole BMW in the field, currently with that time that's just over 0.8 of a second off of the pole time of Tinko van der Velde. Yeah, he's having a great time out there and looking to try, as you say, be best of the rest. 12th in the standings so far. His best points haul was a 5th place at Kyalami, so he's been rocketing up the standings with improved results. Let's see what he can do today. Let's see what this lap time could bring as he crosses the line. It's not an improvement there, but it was mighty close to being one.
Yes, there's still time to improve that lap. Let's keep that in mind as the challenge then continues. Mali making the way towards turn 13. You've got to be careful going through 12 that you are, sorry, going to 14 there of the Curva del Carro out on track. So here is this 14th corner, and now Misano is the only one that's left. Timer expires in qualifying as Van der Velde can't improve it. Jack Noller has gone to second with a 3.66 down, but Mali does improve and gets to within only a quarter of a second. Luke Whitehead is out there on a lap at this stage. Is this going to be any more improvement from Luke here, who is down in P5, knows that he is the last driver really with aspirations. Bit of dust and dirt kicked up in front by one of the drivers. I think that was Sheldon Muscat. So here comes Whitehead searching for times Is there going to be any shades of improvement from Luke Whitehead? One place only on Max Vady. That is a turn up for the books. So it will be Van der Velde who will be on that pole position. We do wait, of course, for Sheldon Muscat at this stage, who is in the middle sector at this moment in time. But Kieran, at least for this moment, Tinko van der Velde just put on a masterclass of finding the one good lap, sticking to your guns, and pretty much nobody else was ever going to challenge it.
Yeah, and he even abandoned his latest qualifying attempt. Just thought it wasn't going to be an improvement. Saw probably on the Delta, saw probably in the car that it wasn't going to improve. Not taking a corner right, could be any list of reasons, and it was still good enough to be ahead of Taha Mali by just over 2.5 tenths as Sheldon Muscat abandons his lap time and pulls to the side of the track, and that will do it for qualifying. So a huge statement made by Tinko van der Velde. He wants to make it back-to-back victories, having won at the back of Kyalami. And our top three in the championship, in Tinko van der Velde and the likes of Taha Mali and Luke Whitehead, obviously not in that order, but they've all won a race so far this season. It'll be interesting to see whether that trend continues. Maybe if that trend continues, we could see a Jack Noller victory. How about that for the books?
How about that for the books indeed? We will write what's in those books in just a little bit, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to step aside here with World Pro Racing. The race coming up with you after this.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this, your AMD GT4 series here with World Pro Racing, streaming live, of course, on YouTube, Facebook Live, and on Twitch as well, of course, as ESTV, the Esports Television Network, Motorsport.tv, and TVM Sport as well. Jake Sperry, Kieran McGinley, bringing you all of the fallout from qualifying as we are jumping very soon into the race. Van der Velde in total command then as we get ourselves ready and going here to get an hour of racing into the books. It's the top four in the championship. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 different cars, 4 different makes, 4 more reasons to go and watch some amazing sim racing where sim racing becomes real. Our race is underway then here from Misano. Looked like a very good getaway from Tinko van der Velde, but look at Mali go, trying to hold it around the outside. He's got the inside there for 2. A nice pinch then from the Aston Martin, and then when it comes to 3, his ability to put the power down, the back end stepping away from Taha Mali, and the lead very firmly in the back pocket at this stage as Macheka now making great progress through already on Vady, who's now got Spec to deal with.
Yeah, and it looks like it's a pretty clean start from all drivers involved then as Marley tried his best to get a move done there. But you said Tico van der Velde perfectly executed the pinch there, which prevented the move from the Ginetta driver. We're almost going 3 wide in the background then, going in towards these next set of corners as Max Vady tries his move then, as he's now behind Sheldon Muscat. Muscat's made a great start off the line then, as he now tries to make his progress up the field. Vady has now got one of the Porsches behind him in Simon Speth. And Lucas Ziga there under pressure from the number 54. That's of Dean Vella. So he's made his way up the field in the Coach Anna Academy car. And it is not the sole Ginetta that Marley is driving. But Lucas Ziga is driving in another Ginetta as well. As you can see there, drivers now trying to size up these fast right-handers for the first time in the race.
Yes, and the first time in the race they can be full bore heading towards the Curva del Carro at turn number 13. Out on track there at the very back of the field is Oscar Saristo in the Alpine. Every reason to go and attack here in the early goings of this race as Jack Noller has his mirrors full of Audi there as Luke Whitehead, a little wide there goes Noller. He's trying to defend with everything he's got. And let's go side by side. Let's go 3 wide. Mercheka tried to fit the nose on that inside. Who is the last of the latest of breakers? Noller is so deep into 1. He'll concertina everyone up through 2. Get yourself around the outside, maybe a 3 if you Luke Whitehead, but Noller's not going to let this one go as they head to the Curva del Rio here at turn number 4. Muscat in the background searching for places as well, going through. What a defence by Jack Noller.
I have to say, going in towards the Variante del Parco there, I thought he ran a little too deep into turn 2 and it was going to compromise his run through turn 3, but Luke Whitehead could not find a way past the Porsche, making it very clear that he wants to hold on to this podium placing right now. Mercheka is under, well, he's got the mirrors full of Sheldon Muscat. Lucas Ziga there being passed by the 54 of Dean Vella. They're swapping positions left, right and centre in the very early stages of this race, but Mercheka then, who got P5 as a best result of the season so far, currently P5. He's got Sheldon Muscat, who's eager to take that position away. Finished 8th last time out at Kyalami. Wants to get and improve on that. Luke Whitehead still trying to find a way past the Porsche.
Oh, it's getting very dicey, and it will have to be to the outside looking here to the next couple of corners for Luke Whitehead. Very tough to do at that section. Both drivers rushing off the road, and they've got to be careful about how much they fall off the road. And wide goes Jack Noller, and all of a sudden, Whitehead gets a freebie to go around and make that move happen. Nicely done. Defended now, moving into the final corner, which just checks them up again. They've already lost 2.5 seconds to Taha Mali, by the way, and here comes Mercheka searching for opportunities then to get through, and with the grunt of the BMW, gets by before they even reach the braking zone. Some wonderful, wonderful work there. It just looks to me like Jack Noller had great qualifying pace, but the race pace does not seem to be there.
Well, it's tough to say that one at the moment because so far in the race, all he's done is defend. All he's trying to do is take the bit of track that means no one can get past. Right now, though, Luke Whitehead and Mercheka have both now found their way through. Sheldon Muscat fancies his chances now at what that will be for P5. But Whitehead's opportunity now to try and close in to the 2 leaders up top is going to be critical now. He needs to start pushing. Mercheka behind will be very keen and eager to take the toe of the Audi whenever he can. Mercheka has really been an inspired form towards the back end of this season. Obviously, he finished 5th at Kyalami last time out, that fortnight ago. He is in some great form, and he will be looking to take full advantage of it by scoring as many points as possible. A late charge to the top 6 is not completely out of the cards for the BMW driver.
Certainly is not, and every point matters in this stage of a championship, no matter where you are in the standings. 5-second time penalty then comes in for Luca Ziga, and let's have a little look then at this on board on a replay. This is Alex Leaf, and a big hit there are coming together as they go on through, and a little skirt across from Alex Leaf means that it's a couple of places that go away, and the steward saying that is a 5-second time penalty to the 199 that will be served, of course, at the pit stop moving on forward. So just keep that in mind. Anything in red right now will be served at the pit stop. After the pit stops here, Kieran, it is going to be served post-race.
Yeah, I don't think the stewards actually took action about that incident we saw between Luca Ziga and Alex Leaf. It was actually against Dean Vella in the number 54, so they've seen something else on the very first lap of this race, and that's what they've given the penalty for. But no doubt they'll have a look at that. That looked a bit racing incident to me, maybe a slight bit of understeer from Luca Ziga going through those really fast right-handers. You're expecting a little bit of understeer, so if you're on the inside, you've got to sort of try and make sure you negate that effect, as well as that if you're on the outside, you've got to expect the car to your right-hand side to have at least a little bit of understeer. You've got to make the space as well. Both drivers maybe could have done more. I'm siding with Racing Instant with that one.
Definitely did look like it there. It was a 2-into-1 style mentality into the corner, and that made things incredibly difficult to try and figure out. Dean Vella still having to deal with various battles of his own right now. That is Samir Foch then just behind, searching for every single opportunity to move up into that 12th position. Meanwhile, Jack Noller has a teammate just behind for GT Omega RPM Esports. It's Sheldon Muscat in the AMG Mercedes, and not just that, it is also bringing Maximilian Vady then in the background into play as well, still having to deal with quite a bit here in these goings right now. It's a case of third on back are looking pretty much like they want a podium scrap here today.
Well, they might get it as well, as the stewards confirmed to us that the incident between Luca Ziga and Alex Leaf, no further action through the fast right-hander, so they clearly feel as well, racing incident.
They certainly do, and it's very telling at this point in time how a racing incident comes into play. A lot of drivers, and in fact a lot of fans, like to say, oh, it's this driver's fault, oh, it's that driver's fault, this person gets a penalty, that person gets a penalty. It's not as simple as everybody gets a penalty all the time. Sometimes you do get those racing incidents, and there needs to be, I think, in fandom, you could say, a little bit more tolerance to the quote-unquote racing incident. Play on, fair ball, let's keep racing. So, at least for the time being, Tinko van der Velde, your race leader, as we're on board with Alex Leaf at this point in time. Taha Mali 1.8 seconds back right now in second position, and in third is Luke Whitehead, but you can see just how difficult it is. Even fighting at the very back of the field, it's a case you've got to look forward and behind. That's Oscar Saristo just in front in the Alpine then, leaves the door open at the Sunset corner there at Tremonto, and just like that, it is comfortably through there for Alex Leaf, trying to get it done. So now what's the Alpine got in a straight line?
Yeah, it's going to struggle now against the Porsche through these flying right-handers. The Porsche got the inside line, and Alex Leaf does get the position done. So now moves up into 14th place. Got to be careful, though, not to leave the door open to Saristo behind. He doesn't. He manages to cover it off, and that is 14th place done and dusted. Whitehead has not closed in to Taha Mali. If anything, he's losing time. And Mercieka, we're just turning up the wick. He's absolutely on it right now. Might have pushed a little too hard in that third sector, because Jack Noller fancies his chances now. He's right onto that rear diffuser of that BMW.
Well, you'd have to say Mercieka looked really aggressive, I think is the right way to say it, looking into that final corner at Misano here, and it was very, very tough to try and make that happen. A bit of side-by-side in the background there as Urbrick and Speth looked like they were side-by-side, and there goes Speth round then in the Porsche for a bit of a spin. Not ideal at all in the slightest for Simon Speth. I think he's now got himself going now behind David Ohak there, and the likes of Silver Piermetz as well. So really uncharacteristic from Simon Speth, a spin at the very, very difficult turn number 4. More to come along in terms of this race as we get ourselves looking at 1/6 distance score complete. Jack Noller for one moment looked like he was attacking. Now he is back into a more customary defense. It has seemed so far in the early goes of this one. Look at how Muscat's trying to weave about and search and wiggle for a way through. Little wiggle of Jack Noller's own as they, well scouted into the corner. Jack Noller is driving very narrow at this moment in time. He is covering off doors like he's very much going through everything right now, all of the motions, but he leaves that one open at the final corner, and Sheldon Muscat now has an open lane, but it'll have to be on the outside into one.
Indeed, but you can see Jack Noller's got just a little bit of drive that he needs to have the nose ahead going into the first chicane at the Variante del Parco. He'll take that away. He's got to be careful not to overrun in towards turns 2 and 3, which he doesn't. But just going through those flying right-handers, Sheldon Muscat just trying to sneak a nose down the inside, just trying to get into one of Jack Noller's mirrors, just to try and put him off. It almost worked because there was a big tank slapper moment just before the Curva del Carro there for Jack Nolle. Managed to gather it up though and keep a hold of the position. Meanwhile, Mikhail Mercieka fancies this place on the podium. He's right on the back here of Luke Whitehead as we make our way up towards the Curva Quechua. Just not quite a move there done or available, I should say, for Mercieka. Back onto the power then, up the hill we go then towards the Curva Tramonto through turns 8 and 9. You see there the BMW taking a wider line in through 8, then in towards turn 9. Trying to get the apex there, but that car squirreling about as he tries to apply the power, and that is the worst place you could really have a little bit of a moment like that, because you lose a little bit of momentum, which then snowballs and snowballs up through Curvone and then towards the Curva del Carro. He's closing though and gaining a little bit of momentum on this latter stage, applying the anchors now through this turn 12, then in towards turn 13 at the Curva del Carro. Still no way through. Luke Whitehead doing well so far to drive that Ashtois Audi quite wide indeed.
Quite wide, and that Audi, of course, is very much being fought against by Luke Whitehead at this moment in time through the final corner and onto the front stretch once again here at this Misano circuit, which is quite aptly on Dejiro Kato drive, effectively, you could say if it was in American. Oscar Saristo, by the way, has got himself a drive-through penalty. What for, we do not know at this moment in time, and is already taking that one down into the pit. So Saristo is in for a very long day at this moment in time, because that does not classify as a mandatory pit stop indicated as the number 1 out there when the pit window opens in about 12 minutes from now.
Yeah, we didn't get an indication about that drive-through. That means to me that's probably going to be track limits. And track limits, having a drive-through 13 minutes into the race, as you say, it is going to be a long, long day. In fact, he's actually retired the car in the pit lane. Having not served his drive-through, he's decided to call it a day. And 13 minutes with the drive-through penalty in the race for track limits is not going to be your day at all. Dean Vella managing to hold off Samir Foch right now. Just to give you an update for the stewards then, the number 10 of Simon Speth and the number 299 of Jan-Nicholas Erbrich. No further action. We saw that earlier on.
We certainly did see that earlier on. Now we're seeing Jack Noller here going side by side with Sheldon Muscat. Look at this as they go through. Muscat, Curvone is the place where he got it done, and now it's going to be up to that virtual driver's machine behind of Maximilian Vady try and get into the mix on Jack Noller. It's been a very, very tough start to this race for Jack. He's down 3 places at this moment from the get-go, and will probably be wondering, well, what on earth did I do to deserve this after such a good qualifying performance? Back on the power again, onto the front stretch once more, and once more it is going to be another case of looking and trying to stay with here in the get-goes of what has been a very tough opening 15 minutes.
We'll be questioning where it's slightly gone wrong, but there hasn't been a moment in this race for Jack Noller where he's able to really get his true race pace. He's always been battling, he's always been attacking, he's always been defending, and that changes the car dramatically. You might find that you've got higher tyre temperatures where you're trying to defend and trying to take lines you wouldn't normally be taking once you've had your race sim. That's probably why there's that difference in pace. There's also, of course, that massive Mercedes of Sheldon Muscat right behind, trying to find that way past. He did eventually get his way past. We'll have to wait and see how Noller reacts to that and how he reacts to that race pace that he hasn't got a chance to show yet. Luke Whitehead, meanwhile, has had plenty and ample opportunity to show his defensive skills against Mikhail Mercieka. It's worked so far, but something tells me that Luke Whitehead's got a long, long way to that pit window opening. It's about 10 minutes from now until the pit window opens. Mandatory stop, of course. Can Luke Whitehead stay ahead of the BMW for the time being?
For the time being is the crucial words in that sentence, as Mercieka has just looked so good through those second halves of those curves, through 11, through 12, in towards that 13th corner out there, the wagon corner, as it's known in native Italian. And now you start to understand where the advantages of that BMW are starting to come in. Looks very good under load, does that BMW. And if you can say that about a car in comparison to the Audi, you have to also keep in mind this is one of the tallest machines. That BMW is a very, very big car, and there's no other way around it. But what it has inside means it allows it some stability where other vehicles maybe wouldn't have as much.
And it's one thing that doesn't normally get mentioned, because the BMW is taller, it is punching a bigger hole in the air than the Audi. So if someone comes up behind Mercheka, they actually get a little bit more of a tow than, say, if they were coming up behind Luke Whitehead. The fact that the Audi's a bit lower as well means there's less tow available for Mercheka to use and take advantage of. The fact that the top of his roof is also causing that little bit of drag he might find in the slipstream. He might not be getting the effective way that other cars might be able to do. It's not affecting him so far as he's all over the back of Luke Whitehead with only about 10 minutes before that pit window does open, less than that now. But it's a mandatory tyre change, and if we know anything about motorsport, being on the fresher tyres and maybe having that undercut might be the way to go. And with Mercheka right behind Luke Whitehead, no doubt he'll try that little bit of undercut in about 8 minutes time.
No doubt indeed. We've been on board for half a lap, and again here Mercheka looks so composed and is able to just carry a whole heap more going through 11 into 12. And then when the next corner comes along, of course, of turn 13, the Curva del Carro, that is the one where you'd argue that Mercheka is better at than one Mr. Luke Whitehead in front. But it swings and roundabouts here, because the worst corner Mercheka has been consistently lap on lap here has been the Curva Tramonto, which completely sets up that run.
It does, and just getting really important to make sure you get the exit of Tramonto really spot on, because after it, oh, here goes Mercheka, fancy the move going in towards Curva del Rio, then not quite the move on. The Audi always had that door shut, but the BMW trying to see if he can pry it open any way that he can. He's gone for the tactic now. He's just trying to disrupt the rhythm of Luke Whitehead, see if he can try and force a mistake from the third place driver as we make our way up towards Curva Quercia, in towards this long left-hander we go. Then back onto the power as you start climbing up towards Curva Tramonto. And as you were saying, Jake, this is a corner you need to get right. Mercheka has had a bit of oversteer as he applies the power out of Tramonto. He's got to make sure that that car is nice and composed as he puts down the power. That will be his best chance to try and use that little bit of tow and then try and go for a move towards those flying right-handers through Covone.
I've just noticed the 199 car has found its way into the pits. That is Ziga, and is unscheduled in terms of a stop out there at this stage. But Whitehead, again, just covering off everything that's needed to. The BMW can't get close enough to make a move, but it is proving very tough today because of all this battling for Luke Whitehead. Look how much ground Whitehead's lost to your race leader already in under 20 minutes. He's lost 10 seconds so far in this race as Mercheka gets all over the anti-cut curves and has to gather it back up again. It's a very, very important point. You'd say it's 10.6, 10.7 out there in front. To lose 10 seconds in the opening 20 minutes, he'll be back half a minute at this current rate if things are to stay as is.
Yeah, he will not be a happy driver in that car right now, and the fact that Mercheka is still there in his wing mirrors is going to be even more annoying for him. The fact that he can't pull away, and every time he's trying to think about where the BMW will be if he has to defend going into the next corner, it loses him even more time to the car ahead. Naturally, when you're in a battle with another car, you lose ground to the cars behind and the cars ahead, so you're almost getting yourself into that trap. But he wants this third place. He needs this third place. He needs to make sure that he finishes on the podium to keep himself in the running going into the final round at the Nürburgring. There's your race leader in Tinko van der Velde, and he could try and take over the lead of this championship should Tahamali finish lower than that second place. It gets to a point where you need to be looking at the points going into the final rounds. 35 points for the race win, 30 points for second.
It is, which would mean that Tinko van der Velde, on count back of most wins, would take the slenderest of slender margins going into that final round at the Nürburgring, because they'd be dead even on points, Van der Velde and Mali, and that is something that pretty much everyone will be hoping for. Look at Murcieka try and harass into Misano corner, trying to get a mistake, a little wide goes Luke Whitehead, just enough, I think, to be okay for the moment, but you are really starting to see it, and here's again Murcieka searching for another look, this time into one. Jack Noller's now having to defend from behind, and he just runs it a little bit wide going through turn one, which opens him up vulnerable through 2 and 3, but Vady, I don't think's in a place to capitalise.
He almost had that move done though, but fair play to Jack Noller. He knew how to reel that position back, holds on to 6th place for now. As you see, that picture-in-picture, that battle for 3rd place. Murcieka trying to get into that toe once again on the run towards the Curva Quechua. And he's not found that way past Luke Whitehead. Credit to him, he's done a fantastic job of keeping that BMW behind. But as he tries to defend even more, the tyres will start to get worse and worse as Jan-Niklas Erbrich and Simon Speth really going side by side. Once again, they meet each other again. And Simon Speth, well, considering that he had that spin earlier on in the lap, has now caught back up to Jan-Niklas Erbrich, still going side by side in towards Kircher here, and sorry, in towards Tramonto. Speth runs a little bit too wide there. He finds the limits of grip, exceeds them, and Jan-Niklas Erbrich holds on to 8th place. But put a pin in that battle, because Simon Speth is totally up for that battle.
Oh, absolutely, and we've seen it so very aggressively. There is Samir Foch in the wish I could change the brake balance McLaren at this moment in time, looking to try and get as much as possible out of these laps, with Dean Vella there just behind, closing that gap on in here in towards the wagon corner once again here in this one. It's worth keeping an eye out as well on the fact that this is going to get colder and colder as things go. In sim time is about 25 minutes past 7, and it's going to continue to get worse and worse in terms of time, because this is something else that they are dealing with at this moment. I'm not sure the time right now is going to be linear, which means that this track is going to dramatically cool.
Yeah, that's going to be one thing that the drivers have to take advantage of and have to think about at their mandatory pit stops. They changed the tyre, so what does the tyre pressures look like? Did they have to make an adjustment for the lowering temperatures? That's something the drivers have to think about on the fly. One of the things that has to make you a complete sim racer, you have to think on your feet on the strategy. There's often drivers here that are completely on their own, and they'll have to think of that at that point. As the track temperature starts to fall, do I change the brake pressure? Do I change the tyre pressure? Do I change anything about the car? What little I can at the pit stop? All of this will be going on in a driver's head. And then they're also trying to battle and trying to set fast laps too. It's a whole different world once you get into that cockpit there, as Jan-Niklas Erbrich once again under pressure from Simon Speth. He's back, is Speth.
Yep, Speth has done very well to get back onto the back of Jan-Niklas Erbrich as they make their way through these very, very, very tough right-handers. There's the first one, there's the second, and then finally the third. These 3 corners right there, Kieran, are left-hand side tyre killers. And this is what makes it very, very difficult to set up a car for Misano, because you need to set up a car that isn't just going to lose the front left or lose the rear left as well. As now Silver Piermetz and Sheldon Muscat get drive-through penalties for track limits within about 3 seconds of each other.
Yeah, I assume, again, that's track limits for the 2 drivers, so that's going to be a huge slap on the wrist for both of them, as they'll have to drive it down the pit lane. They have to take into account as well that they've got their mandatory pit stop, and the pit window opens in less than half a minute. Silver Piermetz is in to serve his drive-through penalty.
Very, very much so. So 2 stops for Sheldon Muscat. That'll be some relief for Jack Noller, who will know he will promote himself up another place. There is Luke Whitehead at this moment in the Audi. Is currently 12 seconds off of the race lead right now, if not 13. And now you're starting to see Whitehead has just been able over the last couple of laps to put his head down, work very hard at what he's got moving forward, and he's built 0.7 of a second of a gap to Murcieka behind. And this is where you start to see calibers of drivers. When you don't have your A game with you, did you bring your B game or your C game? And how good are those B games and C games? That is what wins championships, not necessarily wins.
Yeah, sometimes as a driver you're defined not by your wins, but the hardships you had to go through and the positions that you may not want to finish, but did anyway. Tinko van der Velde then comes around at the final corner of the curve of Misano to complete another lap here to start lap number 16 here at this Italian track, and he's really pulling a lead now. Nearly 9 seconds it was in the last sector time, and see how the Dutchman here in the Sidemax Motorworks car has really hit that grain of form, and he couldn't have hit it at a better time either. If the results stay like this, as Jake said, that Tinko van der Velde would be leading the championship on countback going into the final round at the Nürburgring, but we still have more than half the race to go, so let's not go and count our chickens before they've hatched. Drivers into the pit lane then. Sheldon Muscat to serve his drive-through penalty. Samir Foch, I think that is, sorry, Simon Speth and Alex Leaf both in to serve their mandatory pit stops. They'll be onto a fresh set of tyres.
They certainly will, and they'll use them to attack as much as they possibly can. Worth keeping in mind as well the fact that Sheldon Muscat has come down into the lane, that he is back out in the way again, and he now has still got work to be done at this moment. He has, of course, used that drive-through penalty up that he has got for track limits, but there is Samir Foch, and looking behind when you've got Vela and Ohak there wanting to try and get through and wanting to make an overtake. It's going to be a case of one McLaren, two Porsches, and both Porsches, I'm sure, will think, oh, good, top 10s would be very nice overall. Can we maybe, just maybe, find a little bit of something which is going to get the result that's needed?
I thought you were going to suggest that we're going to work together, and I thought that's the absolute cardinal sin. You don't work together with anybody to try and wake your way up the field. No, of course not. You battle for those positions here and now. Speth, Leaf and Silver Pyramid all into the pit lane, and Pyramid will now go a lap down, but that will only be temporary really, as Tinko van der Velde still yet to make a stop. Seeing who of the front runners will be the first to pit. Taha Mali stays out, Luke Whitehead stays out, Mikhail Mercheka stays out. I'm seeing a common theme here with this top 10. They're staying out for now.
They are, and they want to try and go just a little bit longer here. But first in is Maximilian Vady then from 6th position at the time. So an important pit stop then coming in for Vady, because that AMG Mercedes was starting to get a little stuck behind Jack Noller. As you can see, has made progress in the box stop. We'll be getting a fresh set of tyres on that machine before getting away, and probably compensating as much as possible here to get that one all nicely sorted, and then it will be off and away again for Vady out there on circuit. So at least that's in the back of the mind. Pit stops here do take a little while as well here, Kieran, and that's worth keeping in mind. This isn't, for example, Formula 1, where you've got 84 pit crew and the fact you can get a pit stop done in under 2 seconds. Oh no, this is a lot tougher. You've got maybe, what, 4 people around trying to work things out, maybe even less, 2, 1 for the wheel gun.
I mean, that was a slight exaggeration on the F1 pit crew. 84 is, of course, dramatic effect. It's around 83. But yes, there's only about the 4 to 5 to 6 people working on the car with these GT4 crews, so they're having to do a lot of work. That number 89 car of Max Vady now making his way out of the pit lane. Be interesting to see where he rejoins, because Simon Speth, that is, making his way on towards the Variante del Parco. He rejoins well clear. Most importantly of all is all that clear track he has on fresh tyres. The car ahead of him is Sheldon Muscat, who's already served a drive-through penalty and will have to make a mandatory stop. That'll be another position for Max Vady. Let's see what he can do on fresh tyres, clear track.
Fresh tyres, clear track, nobody in a month of Sundays around him, and very key indeed. Now, this is also interesting because there is Mercheka in a bit of trouble then, as he, well, not trouble necessarily, he will dive into the pits then in the number 97, and will be followed by Jan-Nicholas Erbrich. We saw how Mercheka was starting to fall a little bit behind from Luke Whitehead, so he bites the bullet now with about 5 minutes left, and will get himself a tyre advantage for maybe 1 lap before he topples over a domino, which allows Whitehead, Malley and Van der Velde to all come in.
We are at the halfway mark, still a long way to go.
So halfway, we have found ourselves then at this moment in time. All sorts of great racing we've seen, but the one thing we can say so far, Kieran, it has been dominance from Tinko van der Velde.
It really has. He's shown his true form here, wants to make this back-to-back wins, and he's going the right way about it as well. He's built a healthy lead over Taha Mali. He's really pushed on to try and prevent the undercut from affecting him. He's really in control of his own destiny here. Nearly 10 seconds clear of Taha Mali. Luke Whitehead is in third place, and without that big car behind him of Mikhail Mercieka, he might be able to rest easy, but again, Mercieka's trying an undercut. Luke Whitehead's got to keep on pushing, and sometimes without a car around you, you might not necessarily have that same momentum, that same mindset to keep on pushing with nobody around you. I've fallen victim to it. That's probably why I don't race anymore. Luke Whitehead has got to guard against that for now. Mercieka rejoins. I think that's just ahead of Jan-Niklas Erbrek and Simon Spethler. That was an important move there that he had to get ahead, and now he'll try and use that clear track he's got to the number 89 car of Max Vady. So Max Vady was one of the first to pit. Look at the gap between himself and Mercieka. That's how powerful the undercut is around here.
No, I think it's more than that. I think Mercieka's had a bad stop here because Jan-Niklas Erbrek was all over the back of Mercieka coming out of the pit. So now you start to wonder here whether this is Mercieka struggling. And also, because they've got new fronts on, you've got those cold tyres. They've got to take a lap also to get up to temperature, as into the pits goes Mali, Whitehead and Nolla. Then at this moment in time, leaving just the two out there who have yet to make a stop so far, Samir Foch and, of course, Tinko van der Velde. Erbrek doing just enough to defend against Simon Speth right now, but Speth knows he's had to maybe make that one happen early if he was to have a chance of getting things done. Mind you, let's just open the door up after the wagon. It seems like the horses are bolted and we're continuing to fight through 14. That's a wonderful up and under from Simon Speth to get the move done on Erbrek.
Yeah, he's got the move done now, moves up into 8th place. Jan-Niklas Erbrek, though, will be wanting that position back. These two have been inseparable the entire race. They always seem to find the same bit of track as Speth has the inside line going in towards turn 1. Now heading our way through turn 2. Erbrek fancies a move around the outside to try and give him the inside line into 3, but it doesn't quite work that way through this long right-hander then at turn 3. Onwards then towards the Curva del Rio. Great move from Simon Speth. He's moved up a position and now finds himself ahead of Jan-Niklas Erbrek for, correct me if I'm wrong, the first time this race. He's had plenty of opportunities and this one's stuck.
This one very much did stick, and this was the first time since the Speth spin, which of course really deposited Simon Speth back down the order a little bit. On the brakes again, into the pits then is your race leader, Tinko van der Velde. Had maybe one more lap available in the back pocket to go and get into the pits, but felt nice and comfortable about making that stop at the time that he did. There is Taha Mali for comparison. In comes then the 8 of Foch, and then also Silver Piermax is down in the pits and has been for a couple of laps now at this stage. So I think that is pretty much game over for Silver's race at this point. But the 66 machine is already leaving the pits, already there at pit exit. Taha Mali's only just now made the front stretch.
And that is just showing you how in control Tinko van der Velde has been. Now he rejoins onto the track just after, of course, turn 3 and on his way towards the Curva del Rio. Be interesting to see what the gap is between himself and Taha Mali at this stage. So Luke Whitehead then will find himself back up into 3rd place, of course, with overtaking the number 8 car that's currently in the pits of Samir Foch. And the gap between himself and Mercieka, well, you're right. I think it's more to do with a bad stop from Mercieka because he's now all the way down in 7th place. He was challenging for that podium position. Sorry, 6th place, I'm going to correct myself there. Challenging for that podium position, but 10 minutes ago, it's not gone his way at all.
Ohak, now the latest to be caught by track limits, has now moved into the pits then and served that penalty outright. This is such a tough track for track limits. To be quick, you've got to be aggressive with the curbs. You've got to take as much out of the track as you can. But you also have the swings and roundabouts. If you do take too much, a drive-through penalty pretty much puts an end to any hundreds and thousands that you go and try and save.
Yeah, and that all comes undone, doesn't it? You want to be on the limit as much as you possibly can. And it's always trying to see what you can get away with and then just trying to be a millimetre away from just being, you know, an illegal lap or a lap which you need to take punishment for. It's all about trying to find those limits and trying to be as close to them as you possibly can and as you possibly dare. Macheka then, 6th place, 6.7 behind the next car in Vady, and that gets him around about 15 seconds back from Luke Whitehead, considering he was all over the back of him 10 minutes ago. To lose 15 seconds between then, the pit window, and right now with just 25 minutes to go, that is a huge, huge margin he's lost out on. Has lost ground somewhere in that pit window.
Certainly did, and it very much showed then for the BMW. So Luke Whitehead very comfortably in 3rd position right now, is actually slowly clawing back in to Taha Mali at this stage. That gap had been stagnant around 5.5 seconds, is now down to 4.5 seconds at this moment. 11.4 to your leader, Tinko van der Velde. So I would be looking at this, if you're Luke Whitehead, what now? Because you know that you are losing a few points in the championship. Just to put this into perspective, ladies and gentlemen, Whitehead is 2nd on 87 points. There's not much he can do except get ahead of Taha Mali. That would put him then in a very nice position where he would only be 2 points behind Van der Velde going into the final round.
That is going to be a good result if he can try and close in on that gap, because right now Van der Velde is 15 seconds up the road from Luke Whitehead. He's about 11.5 seconds up the road from Taha Mali. There he is in the Sidemax Motorworks Aston Martin, just absolutely in control, just like he was at Kyalami. He's using that car, he's just in the zone, in the rhythm, and I have to say, Tinko van der Velde, one of the coolest men around in sim racing. He just doesn't even break a sweat. He doesn't even sound like he breaks a sweat, even after one of the great drives. This has looked like it's turning into one of those.
Oh, it absolutely is. This has been wonderful, and you'd say as well, it is getting very much into realms of Grand Slam territory at this moment with 22 minutes to go. Fastest lap, all laps led, and also the pole position on top of that. So it's all very much gearing up for exactly what we were thinking maybe could happen. Someone needs to seize initiative, and somebody very much has, and it is Tinko van der Velde. There is Taha Mali in 2nd position, stabilising the gap to Luke Whitehead, then in 3rd place. And you'd say for now, the Ginetta needs maybe a little bit of a rethink going into that final round. This has been a very good drive from Taha Mali. Don't get us wrong here at this stage, Kieran. 2nd place is really good. It's damage limitation. It's just a case of when you're the championship leader, you are held to a higher standard.
Yeah, I mean, so far in the races we've had so far, in the previous 3, he's only finished off the podium once, and even then that was 4th place. So it really hasn't been a bad season at all for Taha Mali. He's been one of the most consistent drivers in the series. But the fact that Tinko van der Velde could take his 2nd race win trumps everything, because these points are obviously weighted towards winning these races. You've got to make sure you're at the top of the field for the longest time, and make sure you're at the top of the field at the checkered flag. That's your best way of winning the championship. As I said before, top 3 for Taha Mali and Luke Whitehead. For them, just won't be good enough.
No, it won't. And now you're starting to see what good enough is and what good enough is not. Ashtois would have felt with Taha Mali, with Luke Whitehead, that they would have control of their destiny in this championship. They have won pretty much everything here at World Pro Racing. Whenever we put on an event here, there's always Ashtois there, and they're always doing well. It could be Redwan Messaoud, it could be Luke Whitehead, it could be Taha Mali, Hamada Ukizi, it doesn't matter who it is they put in the car. They have quick drivers, and very quick drivers on top of that, the French-based outfit. But would this probably be the first time that they haven't been able to get the big one in the back pocket if it were to go that way? They've got 2 very, very quick drivers who went for 2 very different strategy calls to bring everything together in terms of their balance of performance. Now you just got to keep looking and searching and say, well, have you got it? And who's got the best car for the Nürburgring?
sets it up really well, as you say, for the Nürburgring. It's going to be a really, really good championship decider. If it finishes like this, of course, Jack Noller also will keep himself in the mix to at least finish in that top 3. Do not count him out. He's had a tough race this time around, but he's stuck with it. Currently in 4th place, 2.5 seconds ahead of Maximilian Vedi. He's benefited from Mercheka's struggles and has now got that 4th place. That's really where he really wants to be. He's finished on the podium twice so far this season. The first 2 rounds. At the last round, he finished in 6th place, so he's not had a bad season at all. He's been up and in and around and taking advantage of those drivers that make those mistakes and picking up the podiums where maybe he was a rank outside to get it. At the moment, he's hanging around once again and seeing if any of the top 3 make a mistake. If they do, he'll be straight onto the back of them.
Certainly will do, and that is going to be the key here for Jack Noller. He will need to be picking up scraps if that is to be the case of his race here today. Jack Noller knows that he had a tough start, and it's almost incredible to think about that Jack Noller has done nothing but lose places in the opening half of the race here, Kieran, and now he finds himself in 4th, just down 2 from where he started. So still a very, very good result for Jack Noller, making the best out of what has been a far from ideal situation this evening.
And this is what we were talking about. You're not defined by your greatest victories. You're defined as something is thrown at you. You don't have a great start. There's a bit of crash damage. You have a bad pit stop. How do you recover? Jack Noller here has got back up to 4th place and is building the gap between himself and Maximilian Vedi. It seems like the cooler temperatures, track and air, seem to suit his driving style even more than it did in qualifying. So he's much more confident in the car. He's trying now to close in on Luke Whitehead. That gap is stabilised at around 4.5 seconds at the moment. Keep an eye on it though in these last 18 minutes of this race. Jack Noller's there, ready, waiting to pick up the pieces.
Absolutely, and this is what we have seen Jack Noller do championship on championship. Yes, he hasn't won a championship yet with World Pro Racing, but he is the sort of driver who is always there, and you question why he's in the championship fight. He just knows how to finish and knows how to finish well. Even if he's on a bad day, he is always in the mix one way, shape or form. But we do still have battles out there on circuit. Jan-Niklas Urbrik and Simon Speth is the closest one in terms of time. 0.7 of a second, the margin between them at the last time control checkpoint here in terms of sectors. In this one, of course, sectors always put into 3 segmented places here in this series as Noller puts in a pretty decent time. There is Mika Mercheka. That is the battle behind. That is Jan-Niklas Urbrik wanting to try and get back at Simon Speth.
Yeah, he's set up this move perfectly, really, hasn't he? Still on the back of Speth. We still get to have the popcorn out between these two. They have been battling non-stop. They've been inseparable the entire race so far. And they'll probably be sick of the sight of each other at the end of this race by the checkered flag, no matter, because they put on a great show so far. Going now through in towards the Curva del Rio, now going in towards the quick left-hander, on towards now that short run, or that longer run, up towards Curva Quercia. Let's see if the McLaren could do anything to try and close in onto the Porsche, going up towards the Quercia curve. There you can see Mercheka just trying to build the lead there. Speth taking a wider entry than Jan-Niklas Urbrik does in towards Quercia there. But yeah, you can see the McLaren can't get the drive out of the corner, going in towards the Curva Tramonto through this double right-hander. It is technically a double right-hander. They number it as such, so we're going to call it the double right-hander. Porsche struggling to get the power down, though, out of Tramonto. This could be a chance, then, for Jan-Niklas Urbrik to put the Porsche under pressure.
Oh, yes, and we've seen the Porsche struggle a little bit over this season, and now you start to see where the McLaren starts to get a little bit good. So, very much able to follow was this GT4 McLaren, but not going to quite open up the chance for the 299 of Jan-Niklas Urbrik at this stage. Remember, Urbrik's 6th place in the championship, 53 points. Driver racing against right now? Well, just happens to be 5th in the championship on 54 points. So to say that there isn't a bit of weight on this battle in the championship, Kieran, be a huge understatement at this point in time.
Would absolutely be the biggest understatement we've had so far. These two are going to be battling for this sort of best of the rest status. They're really throwing everything at each other. They've got to be careful though about Mercheka as well, who could gain some serious points on them if they run afoul of each other. They have to be wary of that BMW, who struck a bit of form in this championship towards the latter stages, but Speth is in no mood to let Jan-Nicolas Urbrik pass. He's in no mood to give up on that 7th place, and I know Jan-Nicolas Urbrik is in no mood to finish in 8th place. If you haven't grabbed the popcorn already, why haven't you? This has been a battle that's lasted the entire race so far, and I'm sure it will continue long into this last quarter of this race.
And this last quarter of the race is going to be very hard fought for. A lot of destinies trying to be written at this stage. Look how aggressive into the corner the McLaren can go. Little bit of struggles off of the exit then, as it's now all about power once again. Very weird to say that in terms of GT4 spec machines, you need power, but you also have to understand that even for a GT4 machine, they are still rapid. You can see that on the dash there for the McLaren. 238 kilometers an hour on the back stretch, heading towards here, this section of road. That is not, I would say, standing by and slow down for the Lollipop Man speeds.
Well, it's absolutely not. These GT4 cars are no slouches in a straight line. They will be able to get some serious speed going down these straights. Jan-Nicolas Urbrik, though, still in that slipstream of Simon Speth then, as they make their way on towards the Variante del Parco once again, as they make their way through for the 27th time. These two drivers battling away for what will be relatively 5th place in that championship. If they both finish 5th and 6th in the championship, of course they do win those AMD goodie bags, but you'll want to finish ahead of that driver. You won't just be satisfied with top 6. You want to finish ahead of Simon Speth, or you want to finish ahead of Jan-Nicolas Urbrik. That is where the pride will be. And that McLaren, through that first section, seemed to struggle just a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more than we've seen on previous laps.
Maybe so. And we will see whether that is going to be the case here, as again, they make their way to the Oak Tree corner. Then this wonderful Quetcher left, and now those double right come through at Sunset then at Tramonto, and this is where you see that McLaren just pretty much saunter up to the back, effectively high-five the back at times, and now you got to say, well, I'm going to give myself a very good opportunity if we get down the end of this straight and through these kinks, and maybe a chance to overtake. Look at how close they go. It's covered on the inside by the Porsche of Simon Speth, but that's not going to be a chance for a move then for Jan-Nicolas Urbrik, who does want to get the clean move sorted and get the clean move sorted quickly.
Yeah, really made Simon Speth think about what was going to happen there, but very happy to let Jan-Nicolas Urbrik run on the outside there, because he knew that is where the advantage will be, on the inside line. That's where the racing line is. That's where all the rubber is, that lovely grip that Porsche is able to take advantage of. So he was happy to let Jan-Nicolas Urbrik go around the outside there, put his tyres under a bit more stress, maybe wear them down a little bit more as well than the Porsche. But Jan-Nicolas Urbrik has only got thoughts of one thing: making his way past the Porsche ahead. He can think about Mercheka later down the line. As you said, Jay, this is for a championship battle position of 5th place.
Yeah, and it may be for 7th and 8th on the road, but tell you what, patience here for Jan-Nicolas Urbrik. It may just pay off, and this is one of the things you get with endurance-style racing. Yes, we're in a sprint format of an hour, which is weird to say an hour is a sprint format, but it is. But the key here is, how do you go and make that overtake? How do you manufacture a chance to go through and make that happen? Well, it's a very important thing to say this. You try and hope that the driver in front of you makes a mistake. How do you do that? You just sit there about 2-3 tenths of a second back, and you just make sure that there is a constant reminder that you are there and you are going to take that place away if you mess up.
Yeah, it's much more of a target than if you try and fill the mirrors. That's a good tactic, to try and put the driver off their stride, to put them off their sort of the momentum they've built and the track they're on. You know, try and get them out of that mindset. Try and get them to think about decisions. Once they start thinking about defending, you're already trying to get them on the ropes. Once they start to defend, they're going to lose time. That's where you can try and pounce, take different lines, take a line you can get the power down earlier. All those sorts of things happen instinctively as a racing driver. You do not think about them. I cannot stress that enough. You don't think about trying to attack. You just think about the result. You want to move. You want it done now. You don't care how it's done. You just want it done.
Absolutely, you do. And, you know, it's moments like these, really, Kieran, that goes, why hasn't someone made the 101 rules and handbook guide for drivers and trying to make overtakes, or all of the rest of that? Because I'm sure that if that were to be the case, and if a book like that were to exist, then we've seen about 55 different ways that all can be dismantled in terms of overtakes and opportunities here in the final stages of this race. In fact, through all of this race, there is your leader, Tinko van der Velde, 16 seconds now to the good over Taha Mali in second. And Tinko at this stage is going to be the championship leader on countback as things stand. But do not think that Van der Velde is out of the woods just yet. We have seen today something that we've been skirting on, I think is the right way to say, Kieran, but haven't really touched. This is a track known for incident points, and drivers are struggling to keep it within the lines. Van der Velde, for every bit of gap that he has to keep it in the lines.
He does. And this is going to be more important than ever. Once you get into that rhythm, though, once you start to take consistent lines, it doesn't become too much of a bother. But when it starts to count down, the last 10 minutes of the race, you start looking at how many instant points you have and how far away you might be from a drive-through penalty. You might start to just reel in those little bit of track extensions just a little bit. But for Van der Velde, he clearly has no interest in doing that right now. He clearly feels comfortable. He clearly feels comfortable in where he's positioning the car. He feels comfortable that he's not going to get those drive-through penalties or get anywhere near them. You might have seen him stay off the curbs every now and again, but he's still on full attack. The bravery and the confidence in the car, as well as what you can and can't get away with, is clear to see for the Dutchman. That's why he's leading by over 16 seconds.
Yeah, and that's why 16 seconds is a very tough gap to claw back down. I do want to keep an eye, though, on Jack Noller in 4th position in this one, because he's been quietly putting those laps in on the board. He's now got that gap to Luke Whitehead under 3 seconds. You can see there is Luke Whitehead just in front. That doesn't look like 3 seconds in my book. It looks a little bit less than that as they will go across that time check. It is 2.9 seconds, so I was right by about 600ths of a second. It is less than 3 seconds.
A little bit, yeah.
Yep, a little bit. Every little helps. But Jack Noller, the key here is that I think that his car is coming alive now that the fuel's been burnt off and he's back in that qualifying mode again.
Yeah, you've got a point there. That could absolutely be a reason why that Porsche has now come back alive. He's been one of the leading Porsches in this championship so far. He's been one of the stars in the Porsches. And as you say, as the fuel starts to wear down, the car gets lighter, it gets more towards qualifying trim. The only real difference is that the tyre wear might not be to your advantage. But as he now makes his way in towards the Variante del Parco, he's lost about 0.3 of a second through that final sector. So it's clear to see there where the weakness in his lap times is right now. But in the first 2 sectors, he is reeling in that Audi bit by bit. Is he reeling him in enough overall for the last 7 minutes of this race? Well, we'll have to wait and see.
Depends on mistakes, and you're not going to see many of those. Noller's taking a 10th off of the first sector, but a 10th doesn't get it done from here, Sunshine. You know that better than anybody else, and that's going to be a very tall order to go and get correct come the end. The gap between Speth and Urbrick as well has now increased out to about 1.2 seconds here. So Simon Speth has gone and pretty much distanced himself from Jan-Niklas Urbrick, and he is very desperately trying to bridge that gap to Mikael Murcieka at 1.5 seconds.
Yeah, it looks about 2 meters away now, doesn't he? So that's a good distance away. Yes, he's now turned his attentions fully on Mikael Murcieka. 1.5 seconds is the gap between himself and 6th place, and how he'd love to score more points than Jan-Niklas Urbrick and extend his lead over him in that 5th place. There's only 1 point between Jan-Niklas Urbrick and Simon Speth, so he would love to extend that even more with the German. He's got Murcieka ahead of him. Can he try and reel in the BMW and get past?
Well, can he get past is the point can only start asking if he gets there. If he doesn't get there, there's no point talking about if he's going to get past or not, because there's never going to be an opportunity. Now you start to wonder here for Simon Speth, how good is he going to be to claw down gap upon gap upon gap, as this has been a day of struggles for some out there on circuit, as they all very nice and neatly make their way through the final stages and over towards turn numbers 1, 2 and 3. Once again here in this one, their 31st revolution of this circuit then is in full swing at this point in time. In fact, it may be the 32nd because of how Van der Velde is absolutely flying. But into turns 4 at the Rio corner, and now 5 and 6, which comes along straight after. Mercheka, that gap's come down a little bit again, 1.4 seconds, but that will do at this point when you consider that they've got under 5 minutes now.
Yeah, Mercheka to stay ahead, definitely. He doesn't have to worry about it too much right now, but Simon Speth will be seeing that gap come down bit by bit and almost encouraging even more to try and push even harder, to try and take a little bit more risk going into the corners. We've seen it already. He's not afraid to try and get a move done. He is not afraid to go on the defence when he needs to, and we've already seen he's brave when it comes to moves. They may not come off. They may result him getting into a bit of a spin, but he will try. And he will try and get the move done. He's not going to back down if he sees the opportunity.
No one can fault a driver for trying. That much we all know. If they give a go, they give a good go. And that will give them as much confidence as you will believe. The fact that you can get out there, you can get close, you can race. There is Samir Foch, by the way, in 9th position. Island Racing at this moment in time. 9 seconds to the car in front of Urbrick. 8 seconds behind to Dean Vella. This has been a very quiet 9th place for Samir Foch, and he'll be very happy with it.
I think he will. I think he will. I mean, it's getting to a point where he's sort of getting into the track he wanted for qualifying, where he's got no one behind him and no one in front of him. The fact he finished 13th place last time out at Kyalami, I think he'll be very happy with a top 10 finish. He's got about 3 minutes to go to get that car home. That would be the most important thing. He wishes he could change the brake balance, but I don't think he'd change his position. Not yet anyway.
Well, maybe if he gets exactly what he wants, he might not need to change the brake balance out there of his machine. He has done a wonderful job to make sure that P9 is his at this point in time. But, you know, once again, you start looking here at drivers up and down the order. There is Taha Mali, who is there in 2nd position. Now, give some credit here to Taha Mali. That gap, of course, to Luke Whitehead, we saw about halfway to just before halfway was at 4 seconds. He's done really well in this second stint to extend that gap out to 7.3 over Luke Whitehead and pretty much give himself a buffer for what is 2nd position, which would put him tied at the top of the standings.
Yeah, and Luke Whitehead as well is keeping that gap between himself and Jack Noller at around about 2.5 to 3 seconds. That's really all he needs to do at the moment, does Luke Whitehead. Currently 7.3 behind Taha Mali. 3rd place at the moment, going into the final laps of this race, may be his best bet. And as long as he can keep that gap to Jack Noller, I think a 3rd place will be good enough to keep him in contention going into the final round at the Nürburgring. Sometimes you have to take results like this on the chin. He's already won a race in this championship so far. He knows he's got the pace. He knows he can do it. But the fact of the matter is, as long as he's in the championship battle going into the final round at the Nürburgring, he's got every chance of winning it.
Definitely does have every chance. And we are into the final 2 laps then of this race as dictated to by Tinko van der Velde. There is Jack Noller, the gap 2.8 seconds. Very much isn't going to get closed. What might, though, is Mercheka versus Speth. That gap now 8:10.
Indeed, and Mercheka will now start to be looking in his rear view mirrors and seeing where exactly the German is. He's got to start thinking about seeing what he needs to do to stay ahead of the Porsche. And this is what Speth will now try and do. Make the driver in front think about moves. You can already see there Mercheka maybe trying to break a little bit of toe. That's an early sign for Speth that clearly Mercheka feels the pressure.
Oh, and there goes all of the pressure as Speth runs wide there at the Oak Trees corner there. The Quetcher corner goes all horribly wrong. And I think he might have got away with it, but there is the final lap starting in what has been a very dominant performance so far today from one Tinko van der Velde as he takes himself through turn 2 and over towards turn number 3. That gap now back out in the battle for 6th and 7th to 1.5 seconds then here in this one. Piloting through that Curva de Rio, and now you start working out, okay, final stages of this one is going to be so sweet. That Curva Quecha, the oak tree corner, is very much next. They've got those oak trees on the inside of the corner. They named it as such as they now go through the left. And van der Velde, this is a statement drive that we have been seeing from him. Took him a little while this season to get himself off of the ground, to get himself into momentum range here in this series. Started off with a 4th place finish to get things underway. If that, yes, it is a 4th place finish. On top of that, you've then got the fact that he's done everything right, a 3rd and a 1st, and now you start to look and go, okay, van der Velde can challenge. Van der Velde can be a driver to be a force to be reckoned with. Some would say that he had to work hard for the win, of course, in round 3 at Kyalami. This time, it's going to be a canter as through turn 14, now to the Misano corner. Write your name down here in history, because van der Velde will now take the championship lead and does so with a grand slam. And why not run the bases even longer? He has pulled together a magnificent race to win, has Tinko van der Velde.
35 laps of perfection there from Tinko van der Velde. Not a foot wrong. Taha Mali then comes across the line, squirreling out of the final corner to take 2nd place in this race and become joint top with Tinko van der Velde in this championship. Luke Whitehead flashes his lights across the line to finish in 3rd place. The exact top 3 we had at Kyalami 2 weeks ago. Jack Noller finishing in 4th place keeps himself in with a chance, an outside chance of that championship battle. Maximilian Vady then across the line in 5th place, one of the first drivers to pit in that race, and was rewarded with that undercut with 5th place. Mercheka, a tough race for him, could have been battling for a podium, has to settle for 6th place today. He will be fuming in that lid for sure. Simon Speth in 7th place, Jan-Niklas Erbricht in 8th place. That battle for 5th place in the championship heats up as Speth extends his advantage over Jan-Niklas Erbricht. Semir Foch then across the line in 9th place, the Latvian getting a good finish in front of the top 10. And Alex Leaf then is coming around the final corner to take the final position in the top 10, with Sheldon Muscat finishing in 11th place. Dean Vella had a spin late on in that race. He's come back to the pit lane and will not take the checkered flag, but I'm thinking he still will be classified in this race. But Jake, Tinko van der Velde, 35 laps of magnificence. He's got his 2nd win of the season.
He certainly does, and on top of a 2nd win of the season, what more can you argue with? Led every single lap of this race, had pole position, had fastest lap on top of that, won by a comfortable margin. That cannot go any better. That's why you call it a Grand Slam. Every single factor of that race went in van der Velde's way, and there was nobody who was going to take it away from him. So now what does that mean as we head to the Nürburgring here? And I think it's important we break this down very quickly before we head to driver interviews. Mali and van der Velde tied on points, but crucially, whoever finishes first will take that title away. And more importantly than that, it's going to be a case of, okay, well, who's got what and how does things stack up with every driver? There's going to be a lot of number crunching to be done after the end of today.
Luckily not by us. We'll work on it for the next 2 weeks. We've got enough time to do that, but we'll be sure to bring you championship permutations in 2 weeks' time when we head to the Nürburgring. What it does promise is that pretty much 4 drivers have a chance of winning this championship here at the AMD GT4 series, and I can't wait to find out who it will be.
I can't wait either. Let's get into driver interviews. Luke Whitehead has joined with us right now. Luke, that Audi looked very, very pointy today, very squirrely, and it looked like, especially in the early stages, that you had yourself a little bit of troubles trying to get through a couple drivers. You got yourself out of that, you got yourself into 3rd, a very secure 3rd place finish, and ultimately for you, would you say damage limitation?
Definitely. I mean, you know, as you mentioned, the car was twitchy, and it's kind of a habit of this car. I don't know whether it comes across in the feeds, but the car does have a habit of four-wheel sliding through the corners. So, you know, you probably saw through the first sector in particular, the car was just kind of sliding four wheels. And that also meant that my tyres were dying. So that was why Mikhail and Jack were obviously right on me, you know, at the end of each stint. So it was a really good race at the start, you know, really, really close battle with me, Jack. I think Maximilian and Sheldon also got involved with me and Mikhail and Jack. But yeah, it was hard. It was really hard because I knew that the car is really quick in the straights but doesn't corner. You know, and I use that to my advantage battling with Jack because obviously his car's the opposite. It flies around the corners and doesn't go down the straights. Yeah, I'm really happy with the result, to be honest. Really, really happy.
Well, a happy result for you. You keep yourself in touching distance of the two drivers now who have tied points in this championship effort. But, you know, you've got to take that focus now, go over to the Nürburgring. It's a very different style of circuit. It's one where you need to be absolutely on it from minute one to minute last. And do you feel like the Audi is going to find some form when it moves to home territory in terms of the manufacture?
And I certainly hope so. You know, the car's been pretty weak at every track, really, other than Alton Park, which was incredible there. So it's hard to call. You know, I was hoping this race would be quite a strong one for the Audi, given that there's a lot of high-speed sections and a lot of mid-speed corners. And, you know, I was hoping that would favour this car, but it didn't. So, yeah, we'll have to see at Nürburgring. But obviously the first sector, I think, will help. And I think, obviously, the long back straight will also help. So, you know, who knows? But I know for a fact the Aston, the Ginetta and the Porsche and the Merc as well, they'll all be strong, you know, because all the GT4 cars are really well balanced around there. I think the Porsche is probably the strongest from what I've seen. But then again, the form book goes out the window as soon as we get there. So yeah, we'll have to see. But I hope it's rain. I really hope it rains.
Someone's praying for rain. Well, you're going to have to do a dance or something or other to make sure that something happens there. But before we let you go, Luke, shout out sponsors, anyone you'd like to thank.
So first of all, I'd like to say well done to Tinko and to Taha. You know, those two run... Well, I think I probably could have battled with Taha. I think with if me, Jack and Mikhail hadn't lost so much at the start, I maybe would have had a shot, but he was quicker than me across the race, and Tinko was Tinko. You know, he just absolutely disappeared and has that Aston nailed down. So, yeah, really good job from those guys. Also, well done again to Jack and to Mikhail and also to Maximilian. You know, those guys, it was really respectful at the start, and I'm gutted for Sheldon because he actually looked quicker than all of us, you know, at those early stages. So he was very threatening. You know, I'm gutted for him that he got a penalty. But yeah, and as always, I'd like to give a massive to my parents for watching as always, and all my friends and family tuning in week in, week out. They've been brilliant, even though the last couple of weeks for me have been really tough, you know, regarding racing and regarding results and bad luck. Finally, massive thank you to H3 Racing and SDL Esports for their continual support. You know, it really does mean the world.
No worries at all there. Luke Whitehead picking up third position overall. Kieran, I believe you found the driver who finished second here today, that being Taha Mali.
I have indeed, and Taha, I mean, talk us through that race. It was second in this race. You're now joint top of the standings, but second place in the standings due to countback. Talk us through that race. Was it a good race for you?
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, it was really tricky race. I knew it from the practice because I knew that Van der Velde was running with the fuel, so we had basically the same pace. But I knew that he had some fuel in the car, so I knew that in qualifying should be really tricky, and also the start. So I was trying to do something like the previous race. Try to go from the outside in the second corner, but he managed to see it coming. So yeah, and also he squeezed me a little bit at the second apex, so I was saying okay, no problem. But I knew that the Ginetta didn't have the pace, especially with those conditions, really hard conditions. It was really tricky. So yeah, he managed to pull 17 seconds. It's not nothing. Congratulations to him. He found the sweet spot for the Aston. So I mean, yeah, from my side, it was just a race that I can manage the gap with my teammate Luke Whitehead, because I had three warnings, So just trying to manage I didn't push too hard, just trying to manage the gap, and this is what I did. And also I didn't want to do the same mistake as last time in the pit, so I was taking it really carefully, and it was quite okay. I lost like 2 seconds in the pit, but yeah, I will try to work hard on that area. But overall, like, it was a good result. I have all the chances for the next round, so I know it will be tricky. And I think the main loss with this car is in the straight. I cannot like catch people, like they are like 4/10 per second like fast, and just in the straight. So I cannot do like something in the corners to catch up. So yeah, it was a hard race, but looking forward for the next one.
And of course, talking of the next one, in about 2 weeks' time, we've got the Nürburgring. How do you feel that the Ginetta's going to match up to your opponents going into that final race? There's a lot of twisting corners, but there's also quite a few parts of the track where you need the engine power. Do you think the Ginetta's got the performance?
Honestly, I think I should take a lot of risks in the setup, and I hope that it will be the ideal condition for the Ginetta, because in the long back straight, I know it should be horrible for me. So I should like take some risks in the setup, like in Spa. So probably zeroing to be able to stay with these people, not overtake them, but just stay with in the same lap times. And hopefully I will find like a magic setup for the first and second sector and try to lose it as nothing like in the third sector. It should be a really tricky race. I don't know where to start, but I should start practicing really early to be able to have a chance in the last round.
Well, I won't ask you any more about the next round because we don't want to give you too much away to your opponents who are all listening in. But Taha, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. The floor is yours for any shout-outs, any sponsors you'd like to thank.
Yeah, just first of all, just World Pro Racing that give us the opportunity to race with in this level on this kind of drivers that we are enjoying ourselves so much here. So also for my team H3 Racing, also my teammates that's racing with me, we're having so much fun here. So also for my family, my parents, everyone. So thanks to you guys, and see you next time.
It's been a pleasure, Taha. Congratulations on your second place, and we look forward to seeing you at the Nürburgring for the finale.
Thank you.
And Jake, I believe you're now with our race winner and new championship leader going into the final round.
I am. I have found Tinko van der Velde. Now, Tinko, that was the perfect race. There's nothing more that we can say. Pole position, fastest lap, every lap led, a winning margin of over 17 seconds. You must be thoroughly thrilled.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm really happy with that one. Of course, after winning last week, 2 weeks ago, winning as well. Now again, perfect results for me and will bring me right in the championship fight. So I'm really happy. A really perfect race for me. Not a lot of mistakes, and pole position, fastest lap as well. And yeah, I'm really happy with that.
Well, everything going your way, you now lead the championship, albeit by the fact that you've got 2 wins to Taha's 1. But just talk about that race a little bit, because you spent the majority of that on your own. And how difficult is it to construct a race of an hour on your own, especially when we saw here today a lot of drivers get caught out by the incident points?
Well, it's quite boring, of course, no cars around you, but again, you are leading, so you just have to do your job, drive your best, keeping the gap or extending it, because you never know what can happen. Maybe some back markers or something wrong in the pit, so you gotta keep pushing, do your best, and yeah, that's what I did. And yeah, it was still a fun race because I was leading, of course, and won.
Well, a very fun race for you in terms of the fact that you absolutely dominated, but the Nürburgring is the final point of contention in this championship. How do you feel now? You've got the form, you've got the momentum on your side. Now, how are you looking to approach this final race in order to try and convert what is a championship lead now into a championship?
Well, I have no clue about how they will stack up in Nürburgring against each other. So I hope my car will be good against the others, and I will just do my best, get a good setup, practice a lot, and go for the championship, of course.
Well, the floor is yours then, Tinko. Shout out sponsors. Anyone you'd like to thank? A huge race victory here today.
First of all, my team Sidemax Motorworks, they are a really, really fun team. I'm so happy to be with them, and they helped me a lot to get quicker. And also, I want to congratulate the other podium finishers, Taha and Luke. They've done really good as well, finishing on the podium. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the championship battle in 2 weeks. And yeah, just hoping for a fun end.
Well, a fun end might just be in the offing, but a championship lead now for Tinko van der Velde, your race winner here from this one. But Kieran, final thoughts as we bring proceedings to a close then here from this wonderful Misano circuit.
I thought it was some good racing action. I mean, the top four there pretty much set the scenario for the final round at the Nürburgring. We also saw some great battling between Simon Speth and Jan-Niklas Erbrich in their battle for 5th place in this championship. It all comes down really to the next 4 drivers. It's Tinko van der Velde, Taha Mali, Luke Whitehead and Jack Noller all have a chance of winning that championship. And I can't wait for 2 weeks' time to find out who will come out on top in the AMD GT4 series.
I can't either. The only place you can catch it is with us at World Pro Racing. We've been live on YouTube, Facebook Live, and on Twitch as well as with ESTV, the Esports Television Network, with TVM Sport over in Malta, and on top of that with motorsport.tv as well. But 2 weeks, that's what we have left. Final round here of this wonderful AMD GT4 series. An hour at the Nürburgring. Who is going to tame the green hell and get themselves what they want? Or even better, a GT circuit surprise here and there. But it's a new championship lead that's gone through. A massive thanks has to go to all of those who have worked hard behind the scenes, from George Muscat, of course, and Adrian Fragayo, the stewarding team, working hard to make sure that all of this one worked in a very, very swift manner. From Justin Mifsud on the cameras, Kieran McGinley, myself, Jake Sperry. A pleasure to bring you everything moving forward. Van der Velde with control of destiny right now. It's down to who is best wins. Taha Mali now tied on points. Whitehead, not a million miles away, can still be a huge influence. And let's not forget, Jack Noller still has that outside chance. All to play for then, as we head to the Nürburgring. The final bastion awaits when sim racing becomes real.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
This is so dangerous. You are risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.